The hallway of Jefferson High smelled of cheap cologne, pencil shavings, and the faint metallic tang of lockers that hadn't been cleaned in years. But for Emily Carter, none of that mattered. What mattered was the delicate silver necklace resting against her collarbone, its tiny locket worn and scratched, carrying inside it the only photo she had left of her mother. Emily touched it instinctively every morning, her fingers brushing against the cool metal, a quiet ritual to remind herself she wasn't as alone as she felt. Her mother had been gone for 2 years, a sudden illness stealing her away in the middle of a spring that had once promised renewal. The necklace had been her mom's gift on Emily's 13th birthday, a whisper of love now turned into armor. She never removed it, not in the shower, not in sleep, not even in karate class, where her black belt wrapped tight around her waist, a symbol of discipline and the strength her mother had always seen in her. But bullies never cared for sentiment, and they never looked closely enough to understand what something meant before they ripped it away. It started as whispers. Look at her, always so quiet. She thinks she's better than us. Then came the shoves in the cafeteria line, the books knocked from her arms, the cruel laughter echoing down the tiled halls. Emily endured it, not because she was weak but because her mother's voice always echoed in her mind, control. Breathe, you don't fight every battle. You choose. That philosophy worked, until the morning everything shattered. She was walking down the east corridor, sun streaming through the cracked windows, when Jake Miller and his gang stepped in front of her. Jake was tall, broad-shouldered, the kind of teenager who mistook size for authority. Flanking him were Tyler and Brooke, equally cruel, equally eager to humiliate. Hey, orphan girl, Jake sneered, blocking her path. What's with the grandma jewelry? You trying to look like some old hag? Emily stiffened but said nothing. She adjusted her backpack strap and tried to walk past. Jake's hand shot out, grabbing the chain at her neck. She gasped, her heart leaping into her throat. Don't touch that, she said, her voice low, steady, but laced with an edge she rarely allowed to surface. Tyler smirked. Ah, look, she's getting feisty. What's in here, huh? He flicked at the locket. Secret boyfriend picture, or maybe mommy dearest. Brooke's laughter rang like glass shattering. Probably the only person who could stand her. Emily reached up, trying to pry Jake's fingers off the necklace. Please, don't, it's my mother's. That single word, mother's, sent a cruel spark through Jake's eyes. He yanked, the chain snapping with a sharp metallic ping that echoed louder than any scream Emily could have made. The locket fell to the ground, bouncing once before resting against the grimy floor. No, Emily dropped to her knees, scrambling to grab it, but Brooke's foot came down hard, crushing it into the tile with a wicked twist of her heel. The delicate silver dented, the photo inside mangled. Something inside Emily broke. She froze, staring at the ruined necklace, her vision blurring with tears. Her hands trembled as she picked up the crumpled locket, holding it as if she could mend it with sheer will. The hallway blurred around her. The laughter of the bullies buzzed like static, fading into the background. In its place came the steady rhythm of her heartbeat and her mother's voice, rising from memory. Strength isn't about silence, Emily. Strength is knowing when it's time to rise. When Emily stood, the air around her seemed to change. She was no longer the quiet girl walking head down, ignored and underestimated. She was a black belt trained in discipline, precision, and control, and they had just crossed a line. Jake noticed the shift too. He laughed nervously. What, you gonna cry about it? Emily's eyes locked on his. Cold, steady, her tears dried in an instant. No, she said simply. Then she moved. Jake reached for her shoulder to shove her, but before his hand touched her, Emily pivoted on her heel, her body flowing with the grace of years of training. Her arm shot out, deflecting his hand with a sharp block. In the same breath, she twisted, her elbow slamming into his ribs. The impact sent a sickening crack through the hallway, and Jake staggered back, clutching his side, shock plastered on his face. Tyler lunged at her, fists raised. Emily ducked low, sweeping her leg in a clean arc that knocked his feet out from under him. He hit the ground with a grunt, air whooshing from his lungs. Brooke shrieked, charging at Emily with clawed nails. Emily sidestepped effortlessly, gripping Brooke's wrist and twisting. Brooke screamed, dropping to her knees as Emily's other hand pressed lightly but firmly against the pressure point. Don't, Emily whispered, her voice calm and terrifyingly controlled. Jake roared in anger and swung wildly. Emily caught his wrist midair, twisted, and used his momentum to flip him hard against the lockers. The crash reverberated down the hall, followed by Jake's groan of pain. He slid down, dazed, cradling his arm. The hallway was silent now except for their groans. Students who had gathered at the edges watched wide-eyed, phones raised to capture every second. No one laughed anymore. Emily stood in the center, breathing steady, eyes blazing. The broken necklace glimmered in her fist, dented but still clutched tightly. Her black belt training hadn't been about violence, it had been about respect, control, and defending what mattered most. And today, it mattered. Tyler whimpered from the floor, clutching his stomach. Brooke held her wrist, tears streaming. Jake slumped against the lockers, his arm bent unnaturally. He looked up at Emily, fear replacing arrogance. "You don't touch my mother's memory," Emily said, her voice like steel. And then, with the authority of someone who had finally decided she would never be broken again, she turned and walked down the hallway, every step echoing like thunder in the stunned silence. Emily's footsteps echoed through the hallway, but her heart was still pounding from the surge of adrenaline. She held the dented locket so tightly in her hand that the jagged edge cut into her skin. The sting of blood mixed with the ache in her chest, yet she welcomed the pain. It grounded her. Behind her, the moans of the bullies filled the corridor. Phones were out everywhere. Students who had once turned away when she was mocked now gawked in stunned silence. No one dared to laugh. No one dared to approach. For the first time, Emily wasn't invisible. She was undeniable. She slipped into the nearest bathroom, splashing cold water on her face. Her reflection stared back, wild eyes, flushed cheeks, strands of hair clinging to her forehead. She didn't look like the quiet girl anymore. She looked like someone her mother would recognize. Someone her mother would be proud of. As her breathing slowed, a memory flickered. She was 10 years old again, standing barefoot in the dojo for the first time. Her mom had brought her there after Emily came home crying from another day of being pushed around at school. Her mother knelt in front of her, brushing away her tears. "You have two choices, Em," her mom had whispered, her warm hands cupping her face. "You can keep hiding, or you can learn to stand. Not by hurting, but by protecting. By knowing your strength." The dojo smelled of polished wood and incense. Emily remembered the instructor bowing, the sound of fists striking pads, the way her mom squeezed her shoulders. Discipline first, respect always, and control, most of all, her mom had said. Now, years later, with the black belt earned through sweat and sacrifice, Emily finally understood what her mother had meant. The bathroom door creaked open. A girl peeked in, eyes wide. "Emily, the principal's looking for you." They called the nurse for Jake. His arm, she trailed off, her voice trembling with both awe and fear. Emily nodded silently, gripping the ruined necklace tighter. By the time she returned to the hallway, the crowd had parted. Teachers had arrived, their stern voices echoing. Jake was being helped onto a stretcher, his face pale, his arm bent at a grotesque angle. Tyler leaned against the lockers, still groaning, while Brooke sat in a chair, clutching her wrist and sobbing. Principal Reynolds' sharp eyes found Emily. "My office, now." The whispers followed her down the hall like shadows. Inside the principal's office, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Emily sat straight in the chair, her backpack at her feet, the broken necklace still in her palm. Across from her, Reynolds folded his hands, his jaw tight. "Emily, this is serious," he began. "Jake's going to the hospital. Tyler might have a cracked rib. Brooke's wrist is sprained. Do you realize what you've done?" Emily's voice was calm, almost eerily so. "They destroyed the only thing I had left of my mom." She opened her palm, showing the crumpled locket, the crushed photo inside. Her voice wavered just slightly. "They laughed when they broke it. They left me no choice." For a moment, the principal's stern expression faltered. He looked at the necklace, then back at her face, and sighed. "I'll need to call your father. The board will want a full report." Emily nodded. She had expected nothing less. When her dad arrived, his eyes flickered with worry, then softened when he saw the necklace in her hand. He placed a steady arm around her shoulders, guiding her out. "We'll talk at home," he said quietly, his voice carrying both pride and concern. That night, Emily sat at her desk, the locket under the glow of her lamp. Her father worked carefully, trying to bend the metal back into shape with a jeweler's kit he'd borrowed from a neighbor. "It may never look the same," he said, "but it'll still hold the memory." Emily watched, her fists clenched. "Mom would tell me I should have stayed calm. She'd say fighting wasn't the answer." Her dad paused, setting down the tiny pliers. "Your mom would say you protected yourself. And her memory. She'd remind you that strength isn't just in your fists, it's in your heart." Tears welled in Emily's eyes. I miss her so much. Her dad pulled her into a hug. So do I, Em. So do I. The next day, the entire school buzzed with whispers. Clips of the fight had spread online overnight. Emily Carter, the quiet girl nobody noticed, was suddenly infamous. The video showed every move in sharp detail. The block, the sweep, the flip. Comment sections were filled with shock and admiration. She's a black belt. Jake had it coming. Never mess with her again. Even teachers walked by with guarded expressions, some stern, others almost impressed. But not everyone was pleased. Jake's parents stormed into the school demanding punishment. Lawsuits were threatened. Principal Reynolds had no choice but to schedule a disciplinary hearing. Emily was suspended for a week while the investigation unfolded. At home, she tried to focus on her training. Her dojo master, Sensei Nakamura, called her in. The old man studied her silently before speaking. "You lost control," he said bluntly. Emily's head snapped up. "I didn't." "Yes, you did." His eyes were piercing. "Control isn't about winning fights. It's about knowing when to stop them before they begin." "Did you stop it?" Emily's throat tightened. "They broke my mother's necklace." The sensei's face softened, but his voice remained firm. "Pain blinds us, but listen carefully, Emily, your greatest weapon is not your fist, it is your choice. Next time, choose differently." She bowed her head. "Yes, sensei." But deep down, she knew she hadn't simply lost control. She had made a choice. And if she had to, she would make it again. Meanwhile, Jake's recovery was far from quiet. Rumors spread that his elbow might never fully heal. Tyler walked with his arm pressed to his ribs, and Brooke avoided everyone, her wrist in a cast. Their reign of terror dissolved overnight. Students who once feared them now whispered behind their backs. One afternoon, Emily found herself walking home when she noticed someone trailing her. It was Brooke. She looked different, smaller, fragile, her eyes red from crying. "Emily," Brooke said softly, her voice trembling. I'm sorry. About the necklace. About everything. Jake made us. I didn't." Her words tumbled over each other like broken glass. Emily studied her for a long moment. The apology sounded desperate, but there was truth in her eyes. Emily nodded once, not with forgiveness but with acknowledgement. "Don't follow anyone who makes you cruel," she said simply, before turning and walking away. The suspension ended, and Emily returned to school. The necklace hung around her neck again, repaired though scarred. It didn't shine like before, but to her, it was stronger than ever, like her. The bullies never touched her again. They never touched anyone again. Their humiliation lingered, their dominance shattered. The balance of power in Jefferson High had shifted, not with words, but with the strength of one quiet girl who had finally risen.